So I'm very pleased to welcome Janine and Deb Davies-Tutt to Salvo Fest and CE Week London for their important contribution to the reuse economy. The UK's leading tropical timber reclamation experts, established 30 years ago, and I'm pleased to say a Salvo Code member since 1999. Ashwells reclaims tropical hardwoods such as greenheart, jarrah and kerrel-ring, repurposing in an FSC certified process that reduces further deforestation, saves energy, mineral resources and preserves architectural history. There's many important projects worth name checking, which we'll hear about today, but most recently, Ashwells collaborated on the London Blossom Garden at Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, which paid respect to London's loss and the experience from the pandemic. So over to Janine and Deb to share more of their inspiring work.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you for the introduction as well. I'm really pleased to be here today and to take part in the Salvo Fest. You're doing some fantastic work and it's an absolute privilege to take part. Well, I'm going to put my slides on in a minute, but I just wanted, obviously, you introduced us beautifully, but I just wanted to say hi to everybody and I hope you enjoyed the slideshow and we love sharing the work that we do. Just to give you a little bit of background into Ashwells and what we're all about, any of you that follow us on social media sees us popping up occasionally, I'm sure. But as Sarah pointed out, Janine's been doing reclaimed tropical timber for over 20 years, coming on to 30 years. And her passion is the beauty and strength and durability of the tropical timber. And we believe it's worth the effort to try and bring it in and repurpose it in an attempt, and varying degrees of success, in an attempt to try and reduce the amount of virgin material that gets brought into the UK from the rainforest. Back in the day, back in colonial times, when we brought timber in from all over the world, our colonial legacy, if you like, is on our beaches and foreshores all around the coastline of the UK. And so we try to work with marine civil engineers to, when they're doing the repairs and renewals and bringing out this material, that we can try and get in as early as possible to ensure that the timber doesn't get chipped, biomassed, landfilled, but actually gets a second use. I'll hand over to Janine now, who's going to talk to you about how we reclaim it, why we reclaim it, and the purpose of reclaiming it.
Good morning. Tropical timber, rainforests from all around the world, mainly our colonial rainforests back in the day, is where all of the tropical timber that we have in the UK is sourced. So for greenheart, for example, that's only grows really in British Guyana, as it was back in the day, which is now the northern part of South America, part of Brazil. The eki, which is a very similar in durability and durability and strength, is eki from Africa, in the central belt there. That's more colonial timber, but that's the Dutch. That's their area, so that's why you can only get eki through Holland. The top left-hand image there are groin boards from Hythe Beach down on the south coast. These would be between 50 and 75 mil thick and up to 6 meters long. Mixed species, generally greenheart and eki, but over the years when damage has been caused, you could find all sorts of different timbers in there once it actually gets back to our yard. The next image is the Woolwich Ferry job. This is a job we were approached by BAM Nuttall, the demolition experts, as to whether we'd be interested in taking the greenheart piles from the dolphins. Now, a dolphin is a timber structure, which you can see one in the image there, centre at the bottom, where when the ferries are being loaded, they are sort of lean against the wooden structures called the dolphins, just to keep them steady for loading the cars and the lorries. These dolphins were replaced about 3 years ago now, and all the timber came into our yard. They've been replaced by steel tube, mainly because of global warming. The rivers and the seas, the levels are rising, and it's far easier to add a bit more steel to a steel tube than try and add a bit of wood to the top of the piece of wood. So these piles were 18 metres long. They were 350 mil square, and each one represents a complete rainforest tree. And Nuttall worked really well with us. They moved the timber for us, and every single 80 of those 80 came into our yard. Halfway through the project, unfortunately for BAM, a ship hit one of the new dolphins they had built, and they rang us on a Friday afternoon and said, by Monday, we need another 2 Arctic loads of timber delivered to us to carry out the job. Otherwise, they'd have to wait for more to come from the rainforest. So the timber we'd had from them, we resaw, replaned, repurposed, and sent it back to them, and it was installed over the next couple of weeks. So the job was finalised and finished. Great collaboration between us. Next image is bottom left. That's a high beach down there, down on the south coast, which is where the groin boards above have come from. The piles there would have been 230 mil square, and although you can see about 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters of them there's another 6 or 7 meters actually beneath the beach. So when they replace those timbers, there's an awful lot of nice clean timber that hasn't got any metal contamination. It makes it a lot easier for handling and repurposing. The next image along under the Wood Ferry one is the jetty at Free Trade Wharf in London on the River Thames. This timber here has been standing since the 1800s and is in a very bad condition at the moment. The deck boards are all creosoted, so they are not reusable, unfortunately. They will go to incineration, but the actual main structure below is a mainly green heart with some Douglas fir and some pitch pine. This job is due to happen this year. It's a massive job. There's something like 250 piles in this structure, and probably another 400 cross beams and deck joists. So it'll be a colossal amount of timber coming out. We're hoping it's going to come to us. We're desperately hoping it's not going to go to landfill or incineration, which would be absolutely sacrilege. But there are issues on site with who's going to pay for the job, unfortunately. The residents at Free Trade Wharf don't want to pay for it, even though it's part of their lease. And the PLAs don't want to pay for it because they think it should be done by the tenant. So it's an ongoing row. Hopefully we'll get sorted this year. The final image on the right-hand side, although I can only see half of it, is down in Portsmouth. And this area in Portsmouth is where they were building the new takeoff plane boat. What's it called?
Aircraft carrier.
Aircraft carrier. The new aircraft carrier that's just been launched.
Takeoff boat.
Plane takeoff. Sorry, blank moment. So we were standing on a tugboat next to that little pontoon you can see there at the bottom, and if the picture is turned around, you'd see the rear end of the aircraft carrier. While we were there, we were inspecting these piles. There's 40 of them, which eventually did come to our yard, with Opepi fenders attached to them at the front. Again, about 15 meters long, 350 mil square. But while we were there, giving a good old eyeball to the timber there, the police were all over us because we were so close to the new aircraft carrier. Great fun, lots of smiling and pictures.
Okay, done?
I'm done, I think.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so my turn now to talk about the reuse of the timber. This slide also demonstrates that we are very much a family-run company. As you can see in the bottom middle image, that actually is our son working in the mill, fully PPE'd, and he's sanding down a piece of sequoia that we had in stock, and I think that's been sold for a tabletop or something like that. So a bar top, sorry. It's also important to emphasize what Janine just said, is that actually it's illegal or against the law, whichever way you want to wrap it up, to throw, burn away or compost timber that that can be reused. That's the EU Waste Framework Directive of 2008 and UK Regulations 2011. And this is the sort of the education that we have to keep trying to roll out to people, is to say to them, if it can be reused by law, you should be looking to reuse it. You shouldn't be chipping it or disposing of it in any other way. And we are here to help people to meet their CSR, the responsibilities, and there's a big move within the market, and I'm sure everybody will agree, towards sustainability. I mean, God bless David Attenborough and all the work he did around plastic. And clients are now demanding that architects, designers tick those boxes. That it's the feel-good factor of knowing that your reused material that we've already taken from the planet, we're not going back to the planet and demanding more. We're actually being clever and thinking, well, this country's got so much timber in it already. Why bring in any more? Why not use what we've already got? So that's me and my soapbox moment. But yeah, that's what we're really all about. And the beauty of it is that the tropical timber, you can use it in two ways. You can either use it as a feature timber, because you've got all the colours of the tropics. You've got orange peppy, you've got brown with white flecks, eki, you've got the straw coloured green heart, you've got the nice red rich jarrah. So you could make a multicoloured panel and feature it, or because it's so durable, you could send it back out to work like the workhorse it is and use it structurally. So there's lots of different, I mean, our yard has been called the Aladdin Cave of Timber because there's so much in it. I mean, my best moments are when designers drive through the gate and you can see them getting excited because their eyes are like saucers and they're like, oh my God, let me at it. They just want to, go around, and they'll come in with one idea and they'll leave with 10 because they've been inspired just walking around the yard. Now, I always say to people, yes, I'd love to sell you my timber, but there's also a massive educational side to it as well, which we're very passionate about. Come and see us, have a walk around, let us educate you, let us impart all the information we have to you. So you might not use us straight away, but you'll have us in your back pocket for that design that comes in your office that you think, perfect, this has got Ashwells written all over it, and I can finally use the reclaimed timber I saw that day. So, we're quite happy to play the long game. What else can I say about reclaimed timber? I think that's about it, really. We've got, the one thing I would point out is when you're specifying timber in any project, please don't just put hardwood, because hardwood spans a lot. Oak is hardwood, but tropical hardwood is far superior in so many ways. We get asked to go to projects where they've installed oak on sea defences, and within 10 years they've called us to take it out. There's a big project in Ridham at the moment. We're taking lots and lots of oak out because it's just not got the properties the tropicals have. I mean, if you put green heart in, a 2-inch by 2-inch section of green heart, now imagine 2-inch by 2-inch, not the 450 by 450 we have, or the 300 by 300 we have. If you put a 2-inch or by 2-inch or 50 by 50 in direct contact with the soil, with no chemicals, it will last for over 25 years. So you can imagine if you put a larger section of timber directly into the soil with no chemicals, how long that will last. So I think I've shown quite thoroughly that green heart is far superior to oak when it comes to hardwood. So when you're drawing on your plans and you're saying, specifying hardwoods, put tropical in front of it, please. Okay, so Janine's going to talk to you about a couple of our flagship projects with you now. The first one is
Joe Perkins at RHS Chelsea a couple of years ago. Joe came to the yard because he specifically required some timber that he could overhang, a deck that could overhang water. So he needed to know the strength of the timber. So we set out a whole display for him, got lots of planks out, leaving them all up. The timber came from Whitstable Yacht Club Slipway, and we held them down with big weights, and then we had to work out the movement in the timber when there would be people standing on the edge of this garden, that got a Golder winning garden he designed and built for Chelsea that year. So the whole firm was basically standing on the edge of this, and it didn't move at all. So that enabled us to prove to him, you know, that he could have this lovely big overhang over this babbling brook of water that he designed for that show garden. So at the background of the picture, there is a wall, a groin wall has been built, again using groin timbers that we already would have had in the yard, and a couple of 230mm square groin posts, which would have come off of a beach down on the south coast, probably down at Hythe again, because that was the area that we were working in at that time.
They were really good actually, because when we went to Chelsea and we looked, Joe had very carefully managed to keep the shells attached to the groin boards, so which added to the effect that they'd been there for a long time. So that was quite a clever touch. And also on the Whitstable deck boards, where the fixings had been, you could still see all the little barnacles in the timber. So yeah, it was a stunning garden. And what even made the garden even more, he had a wave machine underneath the decking, and he positioned the rocks so as you sat there, it just felt like you were at the beach, because you could hear the water rippling along. It was stunning.
Amazing design.
Yeah, and quite rightly, he got a gold for it as well. So clever boy.
So this is Kite Park Playground. It's a Berkeley Homes development in Kidbrooke in South London. And we supplied all the timber for a play feature that we worked with John O'Driscoll from Apes, and he came to the yard, as he does, and we walked around. We made a big list of all the pieces he wanted, and created this award-winning playground. So we built to the right here, you can see a bridge, which has got, that will be Whitstable timber there. No, it's not Whitstable timber. Oh no, let me think. No, they are Jarrah boards from railway sleepers that have been cut up. So that's the decking on there. Underneath would be the big green heart timbers you see in the centre for the bridge supports. And then he had a look to behind those green hearts, you'll see some crane mats. They're sort of bolted together timber, about 100mm thick, 75 to 100mm thick, and 1 metre wide, but 5 metres long, which he used for ramps and things like that on the in the design as well. Bottom left, we've got big green heart poles with Jarrah crossing timbers, which are like long railway sleepers. Where the lines cross, they need to have longer timbers. So those timbers are up to 7 metres long, and he handed them in situ and made a climbing wall from them. You can see he's even got wooden climbing holes and that, rather than the trendy plastic ones. That was that job. And then
didn't they use some of these for benches?
Yep, we used the 300mm. We put little feet on them, little tropical feet on them, and made sort of 2 metre and 3 metre length benches. Those particular long ones there were also used for the bleachers, because they made a big wall as a retaining wall, but had these big pieces of green heart, like big steps, if you like. But they called them the bleachers, so all for seating.
This garden was actually nominated for a David Attenborough Award, so it went down exceptionally well in the industry. So very clever design, very talented man. This is the Back to Nature garden, which obviously the Duchess of Cambridge was very involved in back in Chelsea in 2019. We were approached by Adam and Andre White at crucially, at the very beginning of their project, they brought us in and said, right, we need to do a path through this garden that's going to be wheelchair accessible, but also very in keeping with what we're trying to achieve. And so I think the Duchess and Prince Charles were involved, and it was very much, didn't want gravel. Obviously wheelchair friendly it is not, so that was ruled out. Then they went down the line of wanting bark, but that's akin to gravel, so you'd have the same issues if Chelsea had one of those spectacularly rainy weeks that would have caused problems. And so they then came to us and said they wanted timber that looked like it had been there for a long time. And so we supplied them with timber from Southend Pier. And this timber is Caribbean. It's particularly good for heavy pedestrian use. And the carpenter came to the yard and he handpicked all the timber, then it was sent away, and it's actually been mounted on a steel frame so they can, you know, get the undulation right. And the beauty of this garden was it started at Chelsea, and then they took it to display again at Hampton Court. And then from Hampton Court, it went to its home on a slightly bigger scale to Wisley, RHS Wisley, and that's its permanent home now. And we had the privilege of be invited to Chelsea at Press Day, and we met the Duchess of Cambridge, and she was delightful. And it was so nice as well, because she didn't just do lip service to the garden. She actually, Adam and Andre told us, you know, they'd be working in the garden and turn around one day and she'd be right next to them planting. So she was very hands-on, and a lot of the material in the garden she actually bought from her home. There was a little fire pit with logs and things, and that came from her own garden where her children use them just to display in the show garden.
A big hollow tree. And
yeah, there was a big hollow tree there. It was lovely. They did an exceptional job. So that was a complete honour to be involved in. And the beauty of that is we didn't have to do anything to the timber. We just packed it, stacked it, and sent it on its way, and it was made to look stunning. So that was a very satisfying job indeed.
Okay, this first image you can see here is a garden on the River Thames, up near
Benson?
No, not Benson. No, I can't think. I'll find out. I'll remember. It's on the Thames. It's not far from Henley. It's not half far from Henley. This was a disabled lady who was an artist. She created stained windows, and she had a path. We supplied the path leading down to her studio right on the edge of the river. And then they continued that path all the way along, as you can see, round to where they get the boat, where get on and off of their boat on their little lay-by there. Not wrong word, sorry. And all the piling, we supplied all those piles, and all those piles are sections of lock gates. So you can see in that first image on the right-hand side where there's a scarf joint and there's a half lap joint, and there's bolt holes. And yeah, that was a fantastic. And she's got pieces of art in the garden, big people. When you go past it on a boat, it's just, you stop, don't you?
Yeah.
Just stop and look at what they've created with our wood and with her work. It's an amazing job, a really big job. And the guys who put that in, cook piling at Bourne End. They're the guys who do all the work at Henley each year for the rowing. So you can see as you drop down to that picture underneath the stairs, you can see how undulating that wall is. All made of different species, and we've had people approach us who have gone past it on the Thames and said we want the same thing. So it's caught people's eye. The next picture to the right, I'm not quite sure what
this is. Just pick up here. This is just this is a client that came to us, and we've included these images because it really does emphasize Green Heart's durability against mud, water, all the elements. And so he's used the Green Heart as a retaining wall on the edge of his property.
Yeah, this is down in on the south coast near Christchurch, and it's just that, as you can see, the tide's out at the moment, but the tide goes a long way in on that inlet. So yeah, they built that very substantial piece of Green Heart walling there.
Okay, well, that was showing us, highlighting some of the projects. I mean, obviously they are the sort of Rolls-Royce projects of what we do, but also we, because we try to be as zero waste as possible, we will engage with everybody and anybody in or outside of the industry. So what we tend to do is twice a month, we have open days for the public, and they come in. So if you've got like Mr. Jones who just wants a piece of wood for above his fire, or Mrs. Jones who wants a little planter at the bottom of the garden, then we book all those sorts of people in on those 2 days so they can come around and get the timber as well. We we don't want to close our door to the public because we believe that the reclaimed timber should go to as many people as possible. So, so we've just shown you the bigger projects, but we are involved in all different size projects across the board. Now, we, as far as we are aware, we are the only reclaimed timber company within the UK that is FSC certified. The gentleman who comes and audits us reminds us that all the time because he finds us a little bit of a nightmare to audit because of what we do. So, so which is a massive strength for us, because that means that when people pick up the phone and say, I've just pulled out all of this timber, I've got this parcel of timber, they are absolutely doing the highest, they're achieving the highest environmental standards because they're ensuring that that timber goes back into the FSC process. It comes into our yard, we give it a number, a unique reference number, and it goes into stock. We never cut timber unless we've got a firm order, because that's how we minimize waste. So we don't bring it in, chop it up to 6 meter long lengths and pop it in the stock like B&Q or Travis Perkins. It stays as it came in the yard until somebody says, I want that. And then we will cut it. So as part of what we do, that, I mean, we've been FSC certified now only for about 3 years, but it's opened the floodgates to people who have to adhere to certain standards to use our timber, because we're always getting people coming to us saying, I really want to use your timber, but the client says it's got to be FSC certified. So there we went down the FSC certification, and yeah, it's really, really made us jump up the scale, which is fantastic. Now I'm coming to the end of, or we're coming to the end of the presentation now, but I just want to say, as you probably gathered the way I speak, I'm very passionate about what we do, and I'm all about the educational side of it. So we've devised booklets for CPD purposes. Now you have a choice. You can either download the booklet yourself, and if you've got a staff or body of people that you want to share that with, then you can. Or you can contact me and I'd be very happy to come and deliver the CPD for you and answer any questions that people present to you on the day. We've got 2 booklets. We've got one for the reuse of reclaimed timber, but we've also got one more specified towards waterways, because obviously our timber leans towards being put next to water or in water very well. So if anybody's got any questions or wants to talk to me about a CPD element, then please get in touch. But back to you, Sarah, because if you've got any questions, we'd be very happy to answer them.
Lovely, thank you very much. We've got some questions. I think you might have touched on one of the answers already, but so one of the questions is, do you supply to a cutting list, and is there a job too big or too small?
No. Brief answer. No, like, we there's 2 ways. People come to us with very specific requirements and say, I want 6 pieces this length, 8 pieces that length, or whatever. Or some people, when they call us, they won't really know what they want. So we always say, well, have a measure up of the area you want to use and then come and speak to us. And Janine's very, very good at sort of problem solving with clients. And as I said before, no order is ever too small. Some orders are too big, but no order is ever too small. And we have open days for members. You might have to wait a couple of weeks if you're a member of the public till our next open day, but we won't ever turn anybody away. If we can help you, we will. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Lovely. What impact do you think circular construction methods can have on local communities?
We're actually working with Essex County Council, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're in the process of getting involved in their schemes at the moment, because we were approached by them because they recognise that having us involved in projects that they do at the early stages. One, it's twofold again. One, it placates the local population. If they've got to cut down a tree, sorry, our neighbours decided to drill something just as I'm talking. If they decide to cut down a tree, which is horrible in any circumstances because people get very attached to trees, but if there's no choice, they can't build around it and they have to cut it down and they approach us, we can actually make sure that that tree gets a second use. We can either give it back to the local community as a climbing structure for children to play on if it's the right species, or we could make sure that we could give it to somebody we know who does fine furniture. They could make furniture out of it, and again bring it back to the local community, so they still retain that ownership of the tree. It just changes its use. And again, if they're demolishing a building, if they bring the timber to us, we can discuss how that timber, maybe if it's a hardwood, could be used as street furniture, and they could make a big, you know, we didn't just skip it, we've used it. What do you think?
Yeah, it's educating, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
letting them know the timber will get reused. If it's coming to us, it will get a second use. Whether that is street furniture, as you say, bollards, benches, car parking posts and things like that. We've even been approached to do covers for electric car stations, charging stations outside people's houses, because no one wants a big plasticky thing. So we make a cover and green heart for them.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. What's been your most challenging salvage? Is there anything that comes to mind?
We had about 2 years ago, Top Bond approached us? I think it was Top Bond approached us, and they were just clearing out a load of kill blocks from Tilbury Docks. And we thought, great, nice big square chunky pieces of timber, not particularly long, but great for benches and things like that. Well, when they actually arrived, they were full of metal, and not just 10 bits of metal. There were sometimes 20, 30 pieces of metal, either nails, bolts, screws. A nightmare job. And we've only done about 20% of it so far, and the timber's fantastic, but it's one of those jobs you do when you've got nothing else to do. That's taken the longest.
As well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think as I keep saying, we're desperately trying to work with marine civil engineers, and obviously some marine civil engineers are easier to work with than others. But it's that needing to get in when they're discussing a job, and not calling us when the timber's been grabbed, crushed, thrown to one side, and they go, oh, what a mess, we need to clear that, where's Ashwells? When if they called us in at the beginning, we maybe could have said, well, could you just chainsaw here, and that will make that lovely long length very usable. But then they have their own problems as well. I mean, I don't want to demonize all marine civil engineers, that's not what I'm doing. It's like Top Bond did a job recently down in Perfleet, and if it was just physics, they couldn't get a crane over a bridge to get to the timber to pull it out in big sections. It just physically, it wasn't possible or stable enough. So then they ended up cutting all this beautiful timber to 1.5 meter, 2 meter lengths, which is still lovely, but it would have been fantastic if we could have got it in longer lengths. So it's the practicality sometimes are extremely challenging to bring, and they're on a timeline as well, so they just need it out and gone. And if we come along and go, oh, we'd really like it a bit longer, it's quite challenging for them.
If you could give any advice, I think, communication has been a good one in terms of what you were able to rescue. Is there any other kind of key tips that you would say if people were really wanted to be successful with, reuse strategy?
Bring us in early.
Yeah.
Before you even touch your machines, bring us in, and we will happily. Janine does site visits all the time. Just give her the call and she'll pop down and happy to walk around with somebody and arrange transport to get it away off site quickly. Joined up thinking, as soon as it comes out, we'll have something there to take it away. And also to complete that circular economy. If you're doing a sea groin wall going out out on the beach, okay, and you're bringing out all the piles and the boards, and then you're going to put virgin material back in, stop. The material you've just pulled out, is there any lengths in there that could be reinstalled? Because we will take it back to our yard in our sawmill and recut it and send it back to you in a timely way so you can reinstall it. One, you're saving money because you're not buying virgin material, and two, it's the right thing to do. But you've got to bring us in early so we can tell you what bits we think you can reuse. And also, because we're FSC, it is going back. A lot of, not a lot, but we have come across instances where they've bought out material and they just, local farmers have taken it, Joe Bloggs is taking it, and that's gone. That material's gone. It's never going to go back into the FSC system again. It's just gone into the abyss. You probably find it on eBay. Sort of being sold on eBay to anybody who's got a little project, where it could have come to the yard and gone back into the economy properly.
Yeah, I think you touch on really the professional side of the industry, and like you say, the opportunities really that you offer in terms of storage, in terms of handling the materials properly, in terms of really utilising, you know, what anyone's got and to put it back into a project, I think is essential to really engage with the industry, because it's here to help, right?
Yeah, and I have got a couple of CPD sessions lined up for later on in the year with marine civil engineers. So hopefully 2022 will be our year. We'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so thinking about the future, and you've shown obviously some wonderful projects. Where do you think landscape design is going? Because it's looking pretty adventurous from what you've shown. Is there anything that you're getting a feel for in terms of trends?
Really? That I can think of. I mean, you never know what the next phone call is going to be. That's the thing with them. They're so creative, these landscape architects and designers. They'll come and say, what do you think about that? And then we'll have a conversation about what sort of timber maybe, what sort of look you're creating. Do you want the rustic look? You're going to want it all finished. I mean, working on the Blossom Garden was lovely, wasn't it? It really was. And going there for the opening, meeting the mayor and actually seeing how, not manky old timber, because it does look like that to start with, turned into something durable. It's something that's durable and beautiful and tactile. Everyone was stroking the wood, weren't they? We were sitting on the benches and, you know, stroking, stroking the wood. It's just gorgeous.
You do with timber though, don't you? I mean, if you could give you a little example of the benches at the Blossom Garden, there's a timber in there, Eki, which is the brown with the white flecks. Now you imagine that timber came from crane mats from a company in Barking. So that was like a big timber mat with a big crane foot stuck on it for a long time. And now it's part of a bench at the Blossom Garden. Isn't that fantastic?
The jarrah we supplied for the bench as well, that actually came from the Olympic Park. When they were building the Olympic Park, they had to renew lock gates and timbers on the River Lee navigation there. And that was with Volkers. And we brought the timber in, and I knew we had 2 or 3 of these fenders somewhere in the yard still left over. And we managed to find them, and that's the timber we used for the jarrah armrests on the Blossom Garden benches as well. It's a real complete, and okay, it was 20 years ago it came in, and most of it's gone, but there was just these couple of pieces that could go back to where they were originally from. Brilliant story.
Going back to your question though, Sarah, is that there is movement within the industry, because in 2020, the RHS Chelsea Flower Show, their theme was sustainability, and we had an influx of designers come to us who wanted, because they needed that FSC certification anyway, but they were incorporating sustainability and reclamation within their design. So that was a massive springboard for the industry. And also, as I said before, the David Attenborough influence is trickling right the way through. I mean, the Landscape Institute had David Attenborough as a guest speaker at their annual conference. And yeah, there absolutely is a move towards sustainability, but not necessarily displaying, you know, gnarly reclaimed timber, but displaying all the beauty of the timber and then giving the provenance and, you know, the backstory to it as well. So long may it continue, but yeah, there is definitely a move towards a bit more sort of thinking outside the box when they come to doing their design. And the general public are asking for it. They want reclaimed timber.
So I was curious to see how you see you know, people reacting to the materials that you supply. Why do you think they bring a different reaction to the spaces that they go into?
I think it's interesting because we did a show down in Ascot years ago, and I'll never forget the woman who kept walking by. She walked by about 3 or 4 times, and then she turned to me and she goes, "That timber's talking to me, I need to take it home." And I went, okay. But it's a natural product, isn't it? It's very tactile, and you know, how many people come around the yard and they just want to touch it, they want to be close to it, they want to stroke it. You know, and when they see all the patinas, when it's all been planed off and things like that, they just, you know, they get drawn to it. I don't know. I mean, you could say it's all about, you know, earth, water, and all the rest of it, and get very philosophical about it. But and I've always said for years that about the putting timber in public spaces is the thing to do, and with a little plaque saying where it came from, and make sure it's finger friendly, and you'll be amazed how many people come up and the first thing they want to do is touch the timber. you know, and I've even like schools with children with special needs, and you know, tactile, put the timber near them and they'll get drawn to it.
Gorgeous. Well, that's a lovely way to end. I think definitely I would encourage anyone thinking about it to visit, because I think you're doing what David Attenborough has done for the timber. I think, you know, you really get touched by it when you see all the opportunities, and like you say, it inspires design when you see the materials that you've got in your yard. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks. We think so.
We love it. Gets us out of bed every morning.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much.